What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham, G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the Bone Street Krew edition of Table for 3, or otherwise known as Table for 5, for this episode, featuring The Undertaker, The Godfather, Rikishi, Henry O. Godwinn, and Mideon. Henry is referred to as Hank throughout the episode. Mideon is Tex. I wrote in my notes here, Henry O. Godwinn and Mideon just for the sake of clarity and consistency and whatever. But this was great. This was from 2 months ago. I think it went live over Money in the Bank weekend. I am insanely behind on all the Peacock WWE Network content. From this to Evil that I have yet to finish, and the Table for 3. I have another one to watch after this, and the Broken Skull Session shows. There's a lot of those I have to watch and catch up on. And these are all great stuff. I just haven't had the time to watch them or review them yet. But today we're talking the Bone Street Krew edition of Table for 3, as I mentioned. So this was the first and only Table for 5 episode we've ever gotten. The show's been around now for like almost a decade. I think they started doing Table for 3 back in 2015. I think was the first one, featuring I think it was, who was it? Mean Gene Okerlund, I believe Paul Orndorff, and Roddy Piper, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this was great. Mideon did not come in until closer to the end for whatever reason. He said that he arrived at the time they told him to, and that he wasn't late. He just showed up when they told him to. And they didn't stop filming. He just showed up and they filmed the whole thing, which was great. And we've had Table for 4s before. I know we've had, I think it was like Edge and Christian and the Hardys or something like that. And those were very entertaining. But yeah, the first ever Table for 5 here. So they open up the episode talking about missing Yokozuna, who was also a notable member of the Bone Street Krew, obviously. They start talking about drinking bourbon, all this other sort of stuff. A lot of stories on this episode, so I won't tell the full stories. You got to watch the episode for that. It's almost a 38-minute episode, probably the longest one yet. Very entertaining, though, so no complaints. It flies by. Taker recalls handling drunk Yokozuna and drunk Mideon and bringing them back to the hotel, seeing them throw up and putting them in their beds and whatever, which was great. They traveled for 250 nights when they were on the road in WWE. They toasted Jack Lanza, who we lost, I think, either earlier this year or last year. But Taker tells a great story about Godfather and Brian Lee. I think Brian Lee might have been another member of the BSK, and how they explained to Jack, who was like a head official in WWE at that time, why they were late. Brian Lee came up with this grand fake story about his tire popping and all this other sort of shit as to why he was late. And Lanza was like, all right, cool, $500 for the fine for being late. And he's like, oh, what are you talking about, whatever. And then he leaves. Lanza talks to Godfather. Godfather tells him the truth, saying, listen, I was up late last night drinking. I apologize for being late. Lanza's like, don't worry about it. So he told the truth, and Taker says, listen, if you tell the truth, that's really the key there, which I thought was great. I guess Jack Lanza would also book Taker and Warrior when they were working in the early 90s, like in 91 or so. They would book them earlier on in the house show so Taker could leave, fly to Vegas, and hang out with Godfather, and Lanza would always be there for the stories. Like, always would want to hear the stories, which is great. Godwinn shares a story about Mideon, Tex, and Taker in a hotel room, and how they threw him in between beds, and they were waiting for him to get up, and he outsmarted them and fucking tackled them to the ground after destroying the hotel room. Sounds like classic 90s shenanigans from these guys. They talk about staying in dive hotels, which Taker never did because he was in WWE, and they continue to stay in dive hotels, the cheap shit, because that's just what their lifestyle was, and they did it anyway. They went to topless clubs a lot, and Godfather said they did it because there was no social media and no video games, so they had nothing better to do, he said. And he also says him specifically liked to go to country bars. He loved country music. Yokozuna did not like the fact that Godfather liked country music. He took one of his country cassettes and threw it out the window one time and made a very funny comment about it, which I won't repeat here, but it was pretty great. Taker talks about riding with Bear, and how he shares this awesome story how when they went to Pittsburgh one time, they were creatures of habit on the road, and Bear wouldn't really like make his voice heard or whatever, and they were very consistent in going to the same Chinese food spot in Pittsburgh. Bear was looking forward to it. He was all ready, and they had, I think, Mideon with them, or Godwinn rather. Henry O. Godwinn was with them in the car. And Taker asks, this is great. Taker asks the car, hey, where do you guys want to go to eat? And he knew damn well where Bear wanted to go, and he knew he wouldn't speak up. But Mideon or Godwinn goes, let's go to KFC. So they went to KFC instead, and fucking Bear was pissed. Didn't talk to Taker for a week, he said. I just thought that was hysterical. Gets all red in the face, didn't speak up. I thought that was amazing. Also tells a story about Taker. Taker also tells a story about hitting a dead deer. It was already dead when it was on the road, but he just ran it over for some fucking reason. I don't know why, instead of going around it. And he's like, oh, whatever. Ended up ripping out a fuel line in the process. So Taker had to go get a new car, and he stayed with the car while Godwin and Bear walked half a mile to the hotel with their bags, I believe, so they could take a cab from the hotel to the Igloo, which was the arena, I believe, in Pittsburgh, which was another very funny story. They talk about playing dominoes. They bust out the dominoes here. They actually almost caught Big Show cheating one time. And I guess if they did, they said if we would have had to take him down, it would have taken all of us to take Big Show down. Taker admits that he was the one who came up with the Bone Street name, and Yokozuna added the Krew with a K. Crush was also a member of the BSK, I believe, and they remember him and kind of pay tribute to him here. They finish up the Jack Daniels, and right after doing some, Mideon shows up, and they give him the last drink of the Jack Daniels bottle. And he gives everyone Yokozuna socks, which was great. He admits that he always loved to slap Taker when he was drunk. And Taker said that this was a great final story to end on. He invited Mideon to his house, I guess in Texas, for a week, because I guess he was thinking about getting back into wrestling. I don't know when this would have been. And he stayed with him for a week, and he would train with him and whatever. And this was probably like in the late 2000s, because Taker talked about selling one of his bikes on eBay. So that had to have been in the 2000s, early 2010s, probably late 2000s. That sounds like eBay territory right there. And eBay is still around, but that was when it was probably at its biggest. Anyway, so he let Mideon ride one of his bikes after one of their workouts on one of the final days that he was there. And it just so happened to be the first bike Taker ever bought when he was out of debt from everything that he was involved with wrestling. So once he was out of debt, he bought himself a nice new bike, and he was going to sell it that day on eBay. Mideon rides down the, and Taker trusted him because he had rode bikes before. He had rode rode motorcycles before. So he ends up giving him the trust and trusting him to ride this bike, and he fucks it over by flipping over the front of the bike and saying, I'm okay, but the bike gets trashed. Taker is only really concerned about the bike, holds up the bike, completely trashed, stares at Mideon, and Mideon just looks at him and says, I'll go pack my bags. The way they sold that here, the way that Taker told that story was awesome. And then to close it out, they talk about their brotherhood, and they sing Hillbilly Lover, which I guess is a song they made up. And they sing a little bit of it here, so no copyright issues because they came up with the song, I guess. And then they say BSK for life as they close out the episode. So this was very entertaining. A lot of stories, no real structure, just 4 or 5 guys shooting the shit about whatever. If you love these sort of road stories, especially the old school stuff, you will love this episode. If not, probably not for you. Definitely different than the other Table for 3 episodes, but that's why I really enjoyed it. You could tell the camaraderie here was really strong. And it made for a very enjoyable 30-minute episode, or 38-minute episode, rather. So be sure to check it out right now on Peacock. There was one more episode of Table for 3 a few weeks ago, if not just last week, I think, featuring Rhea Ripley. I think it was Bianca, and maybe Zelina Vega. I forgot who the third person was, but another Table for 3 featuring the women of WWE. My review coming soon here on the channel, so keep an eye out for that. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.